Hello, everyone. A very good morning. Thank you for joining me on this webinar. I'll be showing you a small financial use case today. We'll be using Alteryx to perform an audit on credit card expenses. So really quick, this webinar is brought to you by Lovelytics. We are a data consulting firm and we specialize in everything data. We primarily use Alteryx, Tableau, Snowflake, Mapbox, and Salesforce. In addition, we are also associate partners with Alteryx. In case you're wondering what does that mean, we are tech partners, consultants, and experts, and we ensure you get the most out of your investment in Alteryx. Please feel free to follow us on the social media channels that you see on the screen. If you have any questions or if you want to discuss about Alteryx or are looking for any resources, we'd be thrilled to be a part of your data journey. Let me introduce myself. I am Amarendra. I lead our Alteryx practices here at Lovelytics. I'm responsible for the enablement and adoption of Alteryx within our clients. I'm currently located in Toronto, Canada, and I was previously based out of Philadelphia. I've been using Alteryx for about 4 years now. I call myself an Alteryx addict, and very recently I've been nominated as one of the Alteryx innovators and advocates. I'm also currently working on my partner certifications. All right, so before we move on to the use case itself, I would want to pass on something really valuable. If you're someone who is just getting started or want to learn more about Alteryx, here are some Alteryx learning resources. To start with, Alteryx community, it's a one-stop shop for everything Alteryx. You can find use cases, discussions on different topics. We have a tool mastery series which teaches you how to use different tools within Alteryx. We have the Alteryx Academy where we have interactive lessons, live training, weekly challenges, and product certifications. This is by far the single best resource to get started and learn Alteryx. So please check out Alteryx Academy. Alteryx also has a podcast which they call Alter Everything, where they discuss anything from data science trends, enablement, and etc. Finally, a quick conference update. Alteryx conference was formerly called as Inspire and is now being rebranded to Analyticon. And due to the given situation with COVID, it has been moved to June 2021. For registrations or refunds, please use the URL that you see on the screen. I'll pause here for a quick second. All right, as a part of our Alteryx Beginners series, we'll be doing a bunch of use cases once every 2 weeks. And today, we'll be showing you how to input and audit multiple Excel files. And here are some of our goals. We'll be combining multiple input files into a single table structure. We'll summarize and filter all these transactions and maybe show you how to spit out an Alteryx report. All right, auditing in general is done by a company to gauge the overall risks in its compliance policy or to determine whether the company's employees are following certain internal guidelines. So every company generally has a set of rules that fall under this compliance policy. And for today, here is a quick imaginary compliance policy, which says that one card per user is pre-assigned because this is credit card transaction data. One card per user is pre-assigned a single transaction limit of up to $3,000 or a total monthly dollar limit of $10,000 in most cases. So what does this mean? This means that we shall audit all the transactions and flag transactions that have exceeded $3,000 in a single transaction and also flag transactions that have exceeded $10,000 after the end of each month. So let's quickly look at the data we'll be working with. So given we have 11 different Excel files, this is one for each month in 2016. Each Excel file, let me quickly open this. So each Excel file contains data on different credit card transactions. Each row of data is a transaction and the transactions have been categorized by divisions, We have different currency types. We have the date of the transaction. We also have additional information like merchant names, the category in which the transaction has been made. And finally, we have the business justification or the purpose for which this transaction was made. All right, however, looking at these 11 different files, auditing all 11 files in Excel might be a tedious task, or will rather be a tedious task. Why is that? So I guess first we need to perform a pivot table analysis, get some sense out of the data or get some sense out of our transactions in order for us to flag them. Second, we need a VBA macro to make this process repeatable so that we can loop through all the files. I mean, obviously it isn't efficient to sit and manually audit each of these files. So definitely we need an easier process to automate or loop through all these files. Finally, we cannot really automate this process in Excel as and when new files come in every month. Let's say we have 11 files, maybe one of the files for the end of the month is missing. That comes in. Then if you have a VBA code in place, maybe you can run your macro on this file. But I can't really schedule it to run on its own, or I cannot do bi-weekly schedules or monthly schedules with an Excel. So all of these challenges can be easily overcome using Alteryx. So let us open Designer and see how. So let us bring in some required tools from the tool palette onto the canvas. And whenever we drop a tool onto the canvas, we need to configure the tool for it to work a certain way. And we can do that using the, once again, as a quick reminder, this is our canvas here. The left side section is our configuration window. On the bottom, we have our results window. And as you can see up top, we have the tool palette. And towards the upper right corner, we have our universal search bar, where anything we type within Alteryx within this search bar gives us. So let me show you a quick example. So I'm trying to search for a dynamic input tool. And as you can see, I'm getting help resources from the community. I'm getting some documentation related URLs. And also Alteryx is populating some examples. When I click on them, it takes me to a sample workflow that I can look at and understand how the dynamic input tool works. All right, so there are different ways for us to bring in this Excel data into Alteryx. Maybe we can bring in one single file at a time, or we also have the option of loading multiple files all together at once, provided all the files have the same schema. Like in our case, where just because I've seen the data beforehand, I know that all our files happen to have the same schema because they have been processed by a single analyst, or they have a data structure in place or certain rules that they follow to form their auditing files. All right, and so maybe I'm saying that maybe what if you're wondering that what if we have multiple Excel files with different schemas? We can also format them and load them into a single unified data source. This can be achieved using a batch macro. And I will leave some helper articles in the resources section, which you can go through and understand how that can be done. All right, so we know that Alteryx gives us the capability of loading multiple files with different sheets. And we can do this using primarily two different tools, the directory and dynamic input tools. So let me bring in both these tools onto the canvas. So the directory tool returns a list of all different files from a specified directory. It also brings in some metadata along with the file name. So this can be really handy when we want to load all of our files, or when we want to pull all our files from a single directory. And the dynamic input tool, this can be used to load multiple Excel sheets from the same file, a list of files, or even different tables from a database. And the dynamic input tool basically loads the data by appending all the records from different files into a single table. And the way we can do this is we need to set up a template that determines the structure of the table. And the number of fields and the structure of the data must be same within all these files. If there is any mismatch, then simply it will go ahead and skip all those files. Let's say that even your field spellings are wrong, Alteryx wouldn't know how to interpret them, so it'll just plain ahead go and skip that entire file altogether. And Alteryx then goes through all the different sheets and then loads them one by one in a particular order so that you have one single table at the end. All right, so first let's go ahead and set up our directory tool. In this case, in my expenses folder, all the data that I need is in the folder 2016. So I just tell Alteryx to, like bring all the files from that folder. And let's go ahead and set up our template now. So first we select a single file using which we tell Alteryx to follow this particular template. So whatever is the structure from this 2016 Excel file, that is the template that I'm setting or telling Alteryx that, like, please load all my files in this particular format. Okay. Next, we specify the field name containing all these list of files. In this case, it would be full path. And finally, we set up an action where Alteryx has to pick up all the files and load them as a single file or a single table. All right, now that this is set up, let's quickly run the workflow. So looking at the log section of our results window, we can understand that a total of 11 records, or in this case, 11 files were read. And as you can see, here are our 11 different Excel files that we have brought into Alteryx in a single step all at once. Each of these files, as you can see, we have a total of 55,000 records from the 11 files. Isn't this interesting? This is mind-blowing for me. It was so easy, super easy to bring in all these files. Now we don't have to worry about missing any file. We have all our data together and we can process or build a solution all at once and then repeat this whenever we want, or as and when our new data or future data comes in. All right, so let me just quickly add a browse tool so that we can take a look at the data once after it's loaded into Alteryx. All right, looking at the data, I think as a step one, let's first go ahead and get rid of these null values. And then maybe let's also go ahead and do some high-level data cleansing, because I see the data profiling feature happening and it's telling me that there are some null records here and there's some missing values and etc. So first, let's filter out all the null values from the data. What I'm doing here is I'm configuring the filter tool to skip all the null records. So as you can see, every time I add a new tool and I want to see the results, what is happening is all the data is being reread over and over again. So there is one cool feature in Alteryx which we can use to overcome this, and it is called as data caching, where if you right click on a tool, you can then cache the action or the code that is being performed on that tool. So from here on, I can start building my workflow. The data reloading doesn't happen at every step because it has been pre-cached for me already. So now I can go ahead and start building my workflow. That way it's much faster and more efficient. All right. So looking under the true output anchor, I see that I've got rid of all my null values. Let's bring in the data cleansing tool and do a high-level data cleansing. I want to select all my fields. I want to replace string fields with blanks and numeric fields with 0. And then let's go ahead and remove all the leading and trailing white space. All right. Now that we have done that, let's go ahead and bring in auto field. One of the best practices in Alteryx is to bring in auto field where it auto adjusts the field length. That way, Alteryx doesn't consume unnecessary space and the processing can be much faster. I guess let's also go ahead and bring in a select tool so that we can get rid of some unwanted columns. So let me first run this. All right. Our use case is to flag transactions with two conditions. So here, I don't really need the cost centers. I don't need the merchant type. Maybe I'm interested in the purpose, merchant type description. Maybe we want to look at the merchant type, but not the description. Let's keep the division, transaction date. We don't need the card posting date. We don't need the merchant name. Let's retain the original amount and original currency fields. We don't need the account number. Yep. And we are good to go. I think we have significantly reduced our dataset size, so the processing would be much more efficient. Let's quickly run the workflow. All right, so moving on to the next step, in order for us to flag the transactions that have exceeded the daily limit, we need to look at the total amount of per transaction for a day in each month. So looking at the data, we have the batch transaction ID and transaction date. So maybe we can use these two columns to move ahead as a next step in our workflow. So I can bring in the date parse tool, and we can do it two ways. We can use the entire date and summarize, because so each day there could be multiple different transactions on a single day. So we could either use the transaction date column to do our summarization and grouping, or we could just use a date time parse tool and convert the transaction date field to a format that we like. In my case, I think I'll just go ahead and um, well, it's a couple of things. I've jumped the gun here. We have to first keep in mind and look at the data type of our transaction date field first. We know that it's a date data type, and then we need to configure the tool, telling that we are bringing a date format field, and then we are now changing that to a different format. So earlier, I just assumed that I didn't change the configuration. It was looking for a string field to convert it to a datetime format. But in our case, we already had a datetime format, which if we want, we can go straight ahead and convert that to a string or a format of our liking. So let's go ahead and use month, day, and year format. So the reason I'm doing this is because I just want visually appealing a string field which tells me that, what is the day or what is the date and which month does it belong to. So I'll now go ahead, use this new field on which I'll do my group my data and then summarize my data. So now let's bring in a summarize tool. And I know that I want to group each transactions by division. And then using this new, let's go ahead and give this a nice name. Let's call it month, day. And now I'll group this according to my month and day. And then just because considering that there could be multiple different transactions on a single day, let's go ahead and summarize them so that we get a single transaction value for that one particular day. All right, looking at the output of our summarize tool, we know that we now have transformed data where we have information on the total transactions for a single day divided by each different divisions. From here, the next steps are simple. We just bring in a filter tool and filter all the transactions that are greater than $3,000. So finally, we now have an output where we can see all the transactions that have exceeded the given daily limit, which are broken down by division. Maybe it'll be even valuable if we add the transaction ID to the mix. Let's also go ahead and group by transaction ID, because I'm interested in knowing what is the transaction ID attached to each of these transactions. All right, there you go. So a total of 276 transactions where can be flagged for being out of the compliance policy in all of 2016. You can thus copy, paste it as a new report, and then you can send it out to whoever is responsible for taking action on these transactions. All right, so let's move on to the part 2 of the use case, where we have to do something similar. That is flag all the transactions that have exceeded a total monthly limit of $10,000. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. Let's bring in a date time tool and bring the transaction date field into the month year format. Let's also go ahead and group our data by division and by this new month year field. I'm renaming the new field as month year. I'll use that to group my data. And then finally, I want to summarize all the transactions that have occurred in a month so that I can filter out everything that is above $10,000. All right, so for division, I have all the total summarized monthly transaction amounts. Let's go ahead and filter everything that is above $10,000. Okay. So that's about it. Building this simple workflow, we were able to, just to quickly summarize this use case, we were able to bring in 11 different files all at once into Alteryx. And we were then able to audit all these transactions based on one compliance policy that was presented to us. As you can see, this was such a breeze finishing using Alteryx. I can only imagine and wonder how hard or how tedious this would be in Excel. But now that we have built this workflow, we don't have to do this again. We have built this once, and it can be used again and again as and when new data comes in. So that said, my brain is having a hard time processing that this field is not formatted in a calendar year format, calendar date format. So let's go ahead and sort this field or sort this data based on calendar year. So let's go ahead and bring in a formula tool, add a new column using which we'll sort the data. Calendar month sort. And then using the functions tab, I will search for a date time parts function. Bring in my month year field. And given two specifiers, I just want to bring in the abbreviated month name and the 4-digit year. Again, so now using this calendar month sort, let's go ahead and sort our data so that we can now see everything as per the calendar sorting order. As you can see, we have all January's together, February, June, all the way until December. So as a good next step, we need to tidy up this workflow. So we can add some documentation, give some context as to what each of these tools are doing, and then maybe we can start or incorporate the reporting tools. We can send out separate reports to consolidate and send out two different reports where one report consists of all the transactions that are exceeded about 3,000, and the second report can have all the transactions that have exceeded the daily monthly limit. So that is all I have for today. Once again, thank you for joining. I'll see you all next time.